I just want to tell you about two things that are going on that are of particular importance, I think, here in Evergreen and District 8, and then I'm going to stop talking and be happy to respond to any questions you've got. First, this morning, your council member, Sylvia Rannis, made the motion to put a charter amendment on the ballot. And the charter amendment, for those of you who don't know, the charter is essentially the constitution for the city. The charter amendment would enable us to strengthen the general plan, and particularly the protection of our open space and urban growth boundary. And the reason why it's important here in District 8 and Evergreen is that you all know there is a measure that's on the June ballot that would call for the construction of a gated community for the wealthy in the Evergreen foothills here. And it's caused an awful lot of consternation for a lot of folks, including myself. In fact, I just came over from a fundraiser they had for the campaign. I think some of your friends were over there too, so I understand that's why we've got a small group today. So what this is going to enable us to do is this. We'll now have another measure on the June ballot. I can't tell you what letter it's going to be. They sign, the registrar will sign that shortly. But it means that even though we know that these developers who stand to make be more than $1 billion in revenue off of this development if they're successful, so they're going to put millions of dollars into this campaign, we'll have an opportunity to have a charter amendment that voters could approve with a simple majority. And if this charter amendment prevails, it would prevent construction of developments like that one. And so we have a path. We have a path, and I hope that you'll get more information about both measures in the weeks and months ahead. And I encourage you to get engaged in whatever way you think is best to support the community. So I'm sorry, you want to ask about that, Marilyn?
If both measures pass, would the charter amendment wipe that out?
Yes, the charter amendment would prevail because the same way it works with the U.S. Constitution and lesser laws, okay. A charter always prevails over a lesser ordinance. Okay. So that's how it would work. Even if they get 90% of the vote for their measure, if we have 50% plus one on the charter amendment, then it would essentially prevent them from being able to build. Now, all this is going to be subject to a lot of litigation. I can tell you they're going to sue us within the next day or two just to try to keep this measure off the ballot. So you're going to hear and read plenty in the papers about what's going to happen with all that litigation. But Councilmember Rannis has really been a great champion on this, and I think I owe her some data thanks. And then secondly, I just want to tell you, tomorrow I'm going to be releasing my mayor's budget message. Still writing it, by the way. I'll go back home and finish it. But this is really the start of the budget process for us in a more formal way. We kick off with a budget message that tells staff where they should, at least within some broad parameters, align some of the key resources. And then we're going to get these 600 pages of binders that'll tell us where every dollar is going in the city. We're going to have a lot of public meetings, certainly out here in the community and in City Hall. And it will all conclude in June when we're going to have a final vote on the budget. So the news for the year ahead is cautious, but certainly much better than it was 4 or 5 months ago. 4 or 5 months ago, we had projected that there was an approximately $30 to $35 million deficit in the city. Now, to put that in context, obviously 30 to $35 million is more than any of us have. At least I think so. In the context of a more than $1 billion general fund, it's about a 3% deficit. Through some refinancing we've done with the redevelopment agency debt, through some other moves that we made at mid-year and so forth, we've really been able to narrow that deficit considerably. It's now down to $7 million, so that's good news. That's less than 1% of the general fund. And that basically means that we're going to be able to move forward without any cuts in services, any of the key services with which you are familiar and upon which you might depend. So that's all good news. It does mean, however, we're going to continue to tighten the belt, right? We just don't have a surplus. the way the projections look over the next 4 to 5 years is we're going to have these relatively small deficits in successive years. Again, this is assuming the economy is okay or better. If the economy turns hard south, then we'll be back wrestling with budget deficits again. But here's the good news. After 4 years, by the 4th year, we're finally going to start to see the payments that we make as a city to retirement funds start to decline. And that's because of the measure that you passed just a couple years ago called Measure F. This was an arrangement that really codified the agreement that we struck with 11 separate unions to be able to get beyond the pension reform battles of the past so that we could become a competitive employer but still save the money we need to save to be able to restore city services. And as a result of those efforts and the approval of that measure, we're starting to see the end of, well, I should say the light at the end of the tunnel for these very challenging, large expenditures we've had to make in retirement accounts for all these years. Now, it's not going to go down sharply, but the point is, at least it won't keep rising. And that's very good news for us. It won't be the case for many other cities in the state. We're going to see a lot of other cities ratchet up their contribution rates because many of them are cities that are members of CalPERS, and they're still sort of catching up with the reality that hit us several years ago. So I guess what I want to offer is there's some room for optimism as we look ahead, but we're cautious. We know a recession could come around in a year now. We know we're at the end of a very long cycle of business expansion, so that is a perilous time, certainly. And so we're going to continue to tighten the belt. My budget message is going to call for the saving of more than $15 million and putting it into deficit reserve for the future. So that way, if we have that downturn, we're not going to be back in the situation where we were laying off staff. And we're going to be making a few targeted investments, including $3 million additionally for some of our more innovative rapid response efforts for homelessness. We know we've got a huge challenge out there that we are only starting to get some traction on. And I say starting because I think we'll be able to announce this month that we will have housed, since we launched our All the Way Home campaign to house homeless veterans. Our goal is to try to end veteran homelessness by the 100th anniversary of Veterans Day, which is November of this year. This month, I think we'll be able to announce we will have housed our 1,000th homeless veteran. So that's good news. Bad news is we've got a couple hundred more to go. So we're going to keep working on this.
Today, I'm a city commissioner in your city, and they had a concern about disability, senior, retired people. They've done what they're supposed to do. Now is their time, so please don't cut that area.
Understood.
And the housing is, I served 2 and 3 terms of housing. Commissioner, homeless is the most important thing, and you've done a very good job on that, and I keep doing it. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have to do a much better job, though, as we know. We've got more than 4,000 homeless individuals out there every night. So it's a huge challenge for us. Undoubtedly, you're hearing now about the tiny homes proposals that we have from different parts of the city. Whether we call it tiny homes or we're converting motels into apartments for the homeless, or we're just building standalone apartment buildings, whatever it may be, I can tell you every district in the city is going to be a place where we're going to have to build housing for homeless individuals. And I know that is going to involve a lot of really difficult conversations. I've been out there hearing loud and clear from very upset neighbors, and I get it. The challenge is this, I think we need to change how we think about this problem, because a lot of folks are worried that we're going to somehow or another put homeless individuals into their neighborhood by building a complex that somehow is going to bring homeless in. And of course, the reality I think that we all know is that the city doesn't need to bring homeless individuals in anyone's neighborhood. Our homeless are already in our neighborhoods. They're in every neighborhood. There are parks, there are creeks, there are streets. Our homeless are everywhere. They're already part of our community. And so the question isn't whether or not we're going to bring homeless into our neighborhoods. The question is, are we going to house them? We're going to house them. And so that's really what we'll be grappling with in the year ahead. And this, as I said, is going to involve difficult conversations, but I look forward to having those conversations with you and others in the community.
And we got 300 acres up here we can put small homes on.
Yeah. Yes.
Also,
Right now, we're just trying to fight those developments. So anyway, I'll stop talking now. I'd love to hear any concerns.
One issue I wanted to talk about, city and county need to work together. I know you're working to making the effort, because when it comes to the housing issue, we have to work together to make a difference. Because the county and city together.
You're absolutely right. And, the county has been instrumental in providing supportive services as we're working together to build more housing. But you're right, it requires both. Gentlemen, I know you're about the busiest folks in the city right now. I'd hate to have you stay here if you need to run on. Yeah, okay. All right, I just didn't want you feeling obligated. Because I'm a politician, I'll keep talking. You guys have real work to do, so I don't want to hold you up. Okay, hey, thank you very much. Thank you all. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I saw something that you posted to Facebook or something about cleaning up our communities.
Yeah.
And so when I was a younger person, one of the things was if somebody got a drunk driving ticket or something like this, that they would have to do weekend warrior duty.
Yes.
And I never have seen that since I moved to San Jose. So what's the scoop on that?
Yeah, so that's run through the county, I'm told. The county runs jails and probation, not us. And I'm told they have the program, but like you, I've never actually seen anybody out there in the orange suits or any of that kind of stuff doing it.
And yet we got plenty of broken windows around here. So.
Yeah, we do. So I'm happy to inquire again as to where exactly they are doing it. But since you got on the subject, it's a favorite subject of mine. This is a huge pet peeve, and we all see too much trash and graffiti out there. So we have launched last year a program called Beautify SJ. And this is a program that involves lots of different efforts from lots of people, including a lot of volunteers. So the first thing I'm going to show you, in case you don't already have it, and I think many people in this room already do have it, is I'm going to show you the app that we have created called My San Jose. Looks like this. It's free to download on any Apple or Samsung smartphone. It enables you to take a photograph of graffiti, of abandoned vehicles, of illegal dumping, whatever the problem might be, a street light that's broken. Take a photo, it's geotagged, you hit the send, comes back to City Hall, and we're much more able to more quickly respond than with a typical phone call, because the phone calls have to be routed through City Hall. Yeah. So we've had more than 88,000 requests for service so far. We think it's helping us be more efficient and effective in responding. But we're working on a lot of other things too. We doubled the size of our rapid response team for illegal dumping. And so we believe that is helping in improving our response and getting more of that off the street. We have launched a free junk pickup service for every resident. Yes, so that was very well on our team. And so if you call and you've got that couch or TV or whatever it is that needs to be disposed of, we will come by and, the garbage company will come by and pick it up.
Is it once a year?
Is it dumping?
No, it's unlimited time.
Per call?
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah, the
say
phone number.
times, but I think it's twice a year.
No, it's unlimited now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have, let's see here. I got it under FAQs. If you don't have it if you don't have the app, we can get you the phone number.
But I said it's per call instead of.
Yeah, is it 3 items per call, Chris? Is that right?
3 items per call, and
Yeah.
we're in the east side, we're under California Waste Solutions, so here's the number.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, it's 408-213-7800, and you have to call in and schedule a call, and then they'll say, hey, these are the items I'm going to put out, and they'll come by and pick up the items. go continually schedule.
Right.
So,
Thanks, Chris. Chris Fatana is from the Mayor's Office. She's doing a great job. Hardest working guy.
The mattresses you gotta put in the street, you can't lean it up because they won't pick it up.
Yeah. So that's part of the effort as well. We've also, I think you probably know, we've launched these Beautify SJ grants to try to encourage neighborhood associations and schools and so forth to get the community involved in cleanup efforts. And so we give up to $5,000 to paint a mural over a graffiti covered wall, or maybe to plant a community garden where there might be an empty lot. Whatever it might be that the community is engaged with, we're able to bring volunteers in, then we'll provide grant money for that. We've got more than 13,000 volunteers involved last year. Chris has been deeply involved in this effort in our neighborhood cleanups, and we're trying to expand those. And you'll see that pick up as we get into the warmer months in the spring and summer. So all of these efforts and many others are part of this larger Beautify SJ effort. And the goal is a year or two from now, we're going to look back and say, all that awful mess we had out there, we're finally cleaning it up, right? And we're proud of our city once again, and we're proud to say that we live there. Okay, other questions? Yes, hi.
The developers that were going to put 100 acres up on the hillside,
Yeah.
I think they had to get 14,000 signatures on petitions, is that correct?
I actually don't know, but I saw the box of all the petitions in the clerk's office today. It was a lot.
Is that the way it will go to get the charter amendment?
No. There are two ways that you can get an initiative or a measure on the ballot. You can go gather signatures, or you can go to the city council and the council can approve it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So the good news is we're the city council, so we approved it.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you will have your choice of measures too.
I wanted to make a request if it's possible, that you did a good job on the library to increasing their hour and time.
Thank you.
And I wanted to see if we can still keep the staff as limited to have longer hours, because the homeless and the people out there who need to use, when the rainy day they're outside, they need help. And so if we can see not to get a full staff on like a Monday, they open at 1 o'clock, so keep it like 2 or 3 people in the library just to keep running, to help us, to reduce the staff for that day, to increase the hour, if that possible. Please look into it if you can.
Okay, I certainly can talk to our library director. We want to do everything we can to get homeless people housed, but we don't want essentially libraries and parks to be the de facto place where we park people. Because we know that libraries are places where we often have young children, places where, it's important for everyone to feel comfortable there. And homeless people are absolutely welcome at libraries, and they should be absolutely welcome to use them. But we don't want them to be the place where people go to get out from the cold. We need to build the housing to be able to provide for that. And that's not our vision for our libraries. But I understand that point.
That's what I mean to say. My question was a little bit different. The lot of homeless is not as bad. They're kind of wear decent clothes sometimes. They are unprofessional somewhere, or they're working in the just electronic, and somehow it comes. Then also the children, the parents have the time, certain times the school and other work to do in their life, and they need to bring their children to the library at the certain time. And that library is the tool we all use.
Yeah.
Parents, family, everyone.
Right.
So it's a very helpful tool.
Right.
And I thank you for your effort.
No, thank you. And I should mention, since you mentioned libraries, we're really seeing some incredibly innovative work being done by this library team, led by Jill Bourne. Just today, I was at the second graduating class of our online high school diploma program. We had 20 people who got high school diplomas as adults, working, raising kids, all that. And they were doing it by going online at their libraries. And this is a program we just started. It's wonderful to see we now have 33 adults being able to get their GED or high school diploma. And at the same time we're doing that, we just launched our Coding 5K program. And the vision is by 2020, we're gonna get 5,000 kids a year in elementary school, particularly in East San Jose and Central San Jose, learning how to code and learning about computer science. So they're not simply using those devices to play Angry Birds, right? The idea is that we want them actually to be out there succeeding, competing in the Silicon Valley economy, particularly for many of our low-income kids who are not getting those opportunities. Yes, sir.
Yeah, recently, it's a hot button issue for sanctuary cities. And so, what are you in the city, what's your stand on that right now?
On sanctuary cities, yeah. Okay, so we do not use the term sanctuary city to describe the city of San Jose. And that's been the case for decades. What we have had in place for decades is a simple policy which says our police department is not going to get engaged in immigration enforcement in any way. We're not going to be giving information to ICE, we're not going to be out there and arrest, etc. But we haven't used the term sanctuary city, and I'm glad we haven't. And I believe it's not an appropriate term to use, because I think it's misleading. I think it's misleading to tell people that somehow or another they're safe if they happen to live in a city that doesn't get engaged in immigration enforcement. Because the truth of the matter is, no matter what city you live in this country, whether it's San Francisco, Berkeley, San Jose, or anywhere else, if a federal officer has a warrant and they can lawfully arrest you, they're going to arrest you. There's no sanctuary from that. Now, traditionally, I can tell you, as a lawyer, there's a tradition of sanctuary where churches provide sanctuary from law enforcement. That's a very different reality, right? People are actually, there's what they call sanctuary. But that doesn't exist in any city in this country. And so, some of these battles are really over a lot of verbiage, and it's not very helpful. And particularly, I think it's misleading because we have a lot of undocumented immigrants in this city. And what we need to do is to be honest with them, make sure they have the information they need, have access to legal resources they might need, and do all we can to support them, right, without misleading them into believing somehow or another if we call ourselves a sanctuary city, they'll be safe. And so I haven't used the term myself, and nor have we in the city. Now, what's going with all that stuff with Jeff Sessions and the lawsuit that they announced yesterday and all that, it's not going to affect us at all. We're going to continue doing just what we do. And the reason why is very simple. The reason why we don't have police officers getting involved in immigration enforcement, it's really two reasons. As a former criminal prosecutor, I can tell you the most important thing you can do to keep a community safe is develop a relationship of trust between the police officers and the community, right? Everyone has to know that they are safe to call 911 when there's an emergency. They're safe when they go to a police officer and talk about gang activity going on down the street, or the drug house next door, or to testify at a trial. And we have 80,000 undocumented immigrants in our city, right? This is a huge share of our community. And if any one of those individuals feels as though by calling 911, they're going to put themselves or their families in peril for being deported, then we're all less safe. It means when the fire happens, someone's not calling 911. When the sexual assault happens or the domestic violence happens, someone's not calling 911. That's a problem. It means we're all less safe. And so I absolutely support the policy, but what the Attorney General and the Trump administration, all of them are doing is not going to affect us directly. They're still in the state of California, and frankly, I think a lot of it is rhetoric on both sides right now. Our focus is just going to be making sure that we keep our community safe. Other things?
The homeless situation. My concern is it's a tightrope to walk between helping people and enabling people.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. I mean, I know if we have, you have those group of people that are mentally ill that are in the system in the hospitals and the police department or wherever, frequently, and to help them through. The other part of the population that is able to work, that's the part I'm concerned about enabling.
Yeah.
And so, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah,
What
it's
we're
not.
trying to try to help lift them up to the next level.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and there's no, look, these are tough issues because the homeless population is as complex as the rest of the community. Chris Ratana actually is working on an important program right now we call the Gateways Project, which is through the Downtown Streets team, and that's a nonprofit that we brought to San Jose a few years ago. They work on trying to help homeless individuals follow a work first path to self-sufficiency. And by work first, that means they get individuals to volunteer for the program who are homeless, and they are out there cleaning. Right now, we've identified hotspots of trash and graffiti where we have a lot of freeway off-ramps into the city, and it's sort of the gateway for the city, wherever you're coming from, and it doesn't look so pretty. And so we're hitting up companies like TiVo and Adobe and others, and they're putting up their little signs that say, "Welcome to San Jose, brought to you by Adobe." And then every month we've got Downtown Streets team up there cleaning up and hopefully beautifying our city. So we're trying to help Downtown Streets team scale because we've seen that they've got a real track record of success. They get the participants food vouchers and priority access for housing. They don't all get housed right away. It takes some time. But what we've seen is enormous success in many of those folks moving on to jobs. Sometimes the grad works in downtown or Caltrans and their maintenance crews or so forth. And so we think that's a promising approach. It doesn't work for everybody, as you know, right? We've got folks with serious mental health issues, we've got folks with serious drug addiction issues, et cetera, et cetera. Not everybody's work ready, but some are, and we want to get them working. With regard to those who do suffer from various maladies, right? They got a mental health issue and they need to be taking their meds, or they've got an alcohol abuse issue. The one thing we know is that whatever services we're going to provide them, if we're providing it to them while they're living in a creek or they're living on a park, we're really spinning our wheels, right? Those dollars are really wasted. Yeah, the only way that anybody has any chance of succeeding in getting back on their feet or being able to be in a regular, routinized enough practice to be able to take your meds, to be able to go to the AA meetings, whatever it might be, you gotta have a roof over your head. And so that was sort of the insight that gave rise to something that launched about a decade ago called Housing First. It was a concept throughout the country that really focused on really stop spinning our wheels, spending a lot of resources helping people maintain their homelessness, right? We don't need programs for people while they're living outside because it's not gonna do much. Obviously, people need to survive, they need to survive, and we should help, but we'd be far better off spending those resources getting people housed. And so, your point's well taken, but one thing we know is that all the problems we face with homelessness, the concerns we have about safety, the concerns we have about blight and trash, when we see the encampments, the concerns we have for the safety of the individuals themselves who are suffering, all those problems are made better when we just get them housed.
Sir, I wanted to, I'm a Santa Clara County Behavioral Health Board member, and I see there was 100 million came in, and your district aid council, she came into my meeting and addressed that. I think from the city side of, we should get into it to get to those budgets to see how we can work together to make a difference. Because $100 million is enough money to come in from the federal, and we can work together to help us, because we have in the city of San Jose a lot of people with the mental illness.
Yeah.
So that's what my
Thank you. Yes, sir.
To change the subject here, not that two questions, and I'll ask you both of them, you can answer me in manner you want. I read the Mercury News, yourself and 10 council members voted 10 to zip from you against this senior housing thing down there. That's one question. The question to that is, when you've gone to other council districts and presented basically what you're doing now, this evening, what was has the public's response been really wanting to know more about it, or are they thinking, oh, well, it's over in District 8, that's your problem?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that's one question, and the other one was a shorter question. the original proposal, the petition you signed and so forth, I read somewhere, maybe it was the Mercury News again, that the documentation that went underneath that proposal on the clipboard was something like 600 pages long.
Yeah, about
It's
four.
more than 300 pages, the actual
Those
proposal.
are my two questions.
When they circulate the petitions, though, they don't actually have the whole proposal. They usually have, I don't know, a page or two or whatever, which nobody reads anyway, when you're, getting the signatures at the shopping mall. So let me go to your first question, to what extent are other people really engaged elsewhere in the city? I don't have a good sense for that, because I haven't been deeply engaged, as folks, actually, Steve may have better insights than I do.
Excuse me, Mayor. I was talking to some District 10 folks at the fundraiser today and asking them if some of us come over and speak. It says, we got enough people against it.
Yeah.
We don't need you.
Yeah, the good news is, let me offer a couple of insights.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely, Steve. No, it's fair. So, I think folks who care a lot about the environment, about preserving the green line, so forth, they're naturally, wherever they live in the city, they're aware of it. Sierra Club, Committee for Green Foothills, a lot of organizations that are engaged. I don't think most people really understand or take a lot of time, understandably, to think about the general plan and planning issues and all this stuff, because we're all busy, right? We have jobs and raising kids and everything else. So I don't expect there to be an enormous amount of voter intention until we get much closer to the election date. The important thing about the measure that we just put on the ballot today, which is the charter amendment, is that it doesn't just relate to Evergreen. It actually calls for a strengthening of the urban growth boundary in several parts of the city where we know there's a lot of development pressure for more sprawl. By that I mean Alameda Valley and the Alameda Reserve, Calera, Coyote Valley, Evergreen. So these are all areas where we know there's a lot of pressure to keep perpetuating the sprawl that has given us the awful traffic that we have today. It was about 40 years ago that we had, since it's the International Day of the Woman, the first female mayor of any major U.S. city, of course, Janet Gray Hayes, who led the charge to create a green line, right? And what a great legacy to leave for future generations, right? This is now our legacy to uphold. And so I'm hopeful that, as a city, as a community, we're going to appreciate what that means. Yeah. Thank you.
Sam, we only have time for one more question.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Somebody sent us now two ballots, two issues on the calendar. One to be for the senior housing, and the other was the charter.
Yeah.
And is there going to be any problem with them being confused with each other? Because often on these ballots, the same ballot initiatives.
Yeah.
After a while, you don't know which one is which.
That's a good question. We're going to have, I think they're pretty distinct, but then again, I've been in the weeds for a while. One's going to be about building almost 1,000 homes, and one is going to be about protecting our urban growth boundary. So hopefully folks will figure that out.
One is the charter state that this is different from senior housing.
Yes.
You can clearly state that this is not related to each other.
Yeah, there is a connection, right? If you vote this charter amendment that would strengthen the urban growth boundary. And by the way, it doesn't change anything about a general plan, it just keeps our general plan, makes it harder to change the general plan in the outlying areas of the city. So I think it's, I have no idea if voters are going to understand clearly exactly the interaction of what happens if this passes and that passes, right? That's stuff we all have to explain. We're going to try to get the word out to everybody so everybody understands that clearly. But I think it will be very clear to voters that one measure is about building a lot of housing in Evergreen, and one measure is about strengthening our urban growth boundary against sprawl and development. And in fact, the title of the measure is to limit sprawl. So hopefully folks will get that.
Well, won't that be laid out in the voters pamphlet?
Yes.
Does the city council write the piece in the voters, who writes that?
So I will be writing, I've taken responsibility for writing the pro argument for the charter amendment. And so I'll be working with my colleagues to do that.
People read it, they should understand it.
I hope so. I'll try to read it, I'll write it clearly. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Please have a great evening. Thanks, Dave.